In 60 years of practicing medicine, I sat at the bedsides of more than 2,000 dying people. I held their hands, I watched their faces, I heard the things they said when all the pretending was over and only the truth remained. I listened to the last real words human beings speak before they step through the door that does not open from the other side. And after 60 years and more than 2,000 bedsides, I can tell you something that most people are too frightened to say out loud, something the dying know and the living forget. The people who had made peace with death were the ones who had truly lived, not the ones with the most money, not the ones with the longest list of achievements, not even the ones who had been the most successful by any measure the world would recognize, the ones who died with the fewest regrets, who left this world with a kind of fullness in them, even at the very end, were the ones who had looked at their own mortality square in the face and said, "Yes, I know you are coming, and I am going to live accordingly. I am 91 years old. I am a retired physician, and today I want to talk to you about the thing nobody wants to talk about, because understanding it, truly understanding it, is the only thing that will set you completely free." Let me tell you about Eleanor. Eleanor was 74 when she first came to me. She had a terminal diagnosis, the kind that writes its own timetable. But Eleanor was the most unhurried, clear-eyed, radiant human being I have ever had the privilege of caring for. She did not deny what was coming. She did not bargain with it or fight it with bitterness. She simply looked at the time she had left and asked one question. Not, how do I survive this? But what do I want this time to mean? In the 18 months between her diagnosis and her death, Eleanor wrote letters to every person who had ever mattered to her. She took a trip she had postponed for 30 years. She had conversations with her children that none of them had dared to have before. Honest, tender, unflinching conversations that healed wounds that had been bleeding quietly for decades. She learned to paint, badly, joyfully, completely. When Eleanor died, she died at home surrounded by people who loved her, holding her daughter's hand with a small smile on her face that I have never forgotten. Not the smile of someone who was glad to be leaving, the smile of someone who had finished. She had finished. Now let me tell you about Gerald. Gerald was 68 when he was given the same kind of diagnosis Eleanor had received. But Gerald did something entirely different with that information. He refused it. Not medically. He pursued every treatment available, which was his right. But emotionally, psychologically, he refused to acknowledge what was coming. He would not speak of it. He forbade his family from speaking of it. Every conversation about legacy, about preparation, about the people he loved and what he wanted them to know, he shut down, quickly, angrily, with the particular fury of a man who believed that if he never looked at the thing directly, the thing could not find him. Gerald spent the last 2 years of his life fighting, not the illness, but the truth. And so the letters were never written, the conversations never happened. The things he most needed to say to the people he most loved remained locked inside him until the very end, when he no longer had the strength to say them. I was with Gerald when he died, and in his final hours, when the fight had gone out of him and only the truth remained, he looked at me with eyes that broke my heart, and he said just 3 words. I was afraid, that was all. I was afraid. 3 words for a life of magnificent, squandered possibility. 3 words where there should have been thousands. Do you understand what I am saying to you? Eleanor and Gerald received the same diagnosis in the same year from the same physician. The difference between them was not medical. The difference was one simple, devastating decision. Eleanor chose to look at midnight clearly. Gerald chose to look away. And the one who looked away lost everything he was still trying to protect. Now, I am not asking you to think about death in a morbid way. I am not asking you to dwell in darkness or fix your gaze on endings. What I am asking, what 60 years of medicine and 91 years of living compel me to ask, is this: what would you do differently if you knew, truly knew in your bones, that your time was genuinely finite? Not theoretically finite, in the vague, comfortable way we all know and conveniently ignore, but actually, specifically, urgently finite, because it is. For all of us, midnight will come. The only question is whether you will have danced before it arrives. Here is what I know. 3 things. Simple, clear, true. First, name the deadline. Not in a frightening way, in a liberating one. Sit with the reality that this specific life, in this specific body, with these specific people around you, will end. Name that truth. Let it land. Because the moment it truly lands, not as a concept, but as a felt reality, small things stop mattering in the way they used to. Petty grievances lose their grip. The argument you have been carrying for 3 years suddenly feels very light against the weight of what actually matters. You stop saving the good dishes for guests and start eating dinner off them with the people you love. Naming the deadline does not shorten your life. It lengthens the part of it that is actually lived. Second, let the small things fall. I have watched people on their deathbeds, and not one, not a single one among more than 2,000 has ever said, I wish I had spent more time being offended. I wish I had held that grudge longer. I wish I had worried more about what the neighbors thought. Not one. The small things that consume so much of the living, the slights, the comparisons, the endless low-level anxiety about appearances and status and approval, they dissolve at the end like morning fog. They were never real in the way love is real. They were never solid in the way a hand held at the end of a life is solid. Let them fall now, before the end does it for you. More brutally, with less time to recover. Third, live toward something, not away from something. Gerald spent his last years running from the thought of death, and in running away from it, he ran straight through his remaining life without once stopping to actually inhabit it. Eleanor did the opposite. She lived toward her children's faces, toward her unwritten letters, toward the painting she had always put off, toward the conversations she had been saving for later. She lived with direction, with intention, with the particular aliveness of someone who has accepted that the candle is burning and has decided to make extraordinary use of its light. You cannot run fast enough to escape midnight, but you can live so fully before it comes that when it arrives, it finds you finished, satisfied, at rest. I am 91 years old. I have delivered difficult news to more families than I can count. I have watched people leave this world in every possible state, full and empty, grateful and bitter, finished and incomplete. And I am asking you, from everything I have witnessed, from every hand I have held, from every last word I have been trusted to receive, Please do not wait for the diagnosis to begin living. The candle is already lit. It has been burning since the day you were born. You cannot see how much is left. Live now. Love now. Love now. Say the thing now. Make the call now. Take the trip now. Have the conversation now. Midnight will come for all of us. Do not let it find you waiting to begin.